It has been, I'm not going to tell you how many we had last week, but we were down just a little bit. I think we set our record low last week. Yeah, we had 9. So that's including me. So it is good to see everybody. Visitors, good to see you.
Amen.
You guys have been on 3 weeks, haven't you? So you have to rejoin this morning. So we expect at least 8 of you to walk forward. At least if you guys go, you didn't go, did you?
We were not.
Oh, I see.
Only 6 people we paid attention.
Well, you got the back. That's what tell me. Our beds. Yeah, put them in the bed. Well, how many of you have ever, other than Lisa, been disappointed and not getting invited? How many of you have ever been disappointed before? Disappointment. How many of you live with disappointment? Yeah, you know, we are often disappointed in life. And before we say anything, I have a bad finger. For those of you that didn't see it, I dropped a rock on it. And yes, I wasn't supposed to be lifting the rock. Well, I was trying it with a shovel, a rock about that big. I had my hand like this, and the rock slipped off the shovel and caught the tip of my finger, and I've got 6 stitches across the middle of it, or across the top of it. So anyway, so you don't wonder, that's why I've got it wrapped up. And protect that way when I pound the pulpit, it won't hurt. So, but you know, we live in disappointment sometimes. So today the message is not about disappointment, rather it's about encouragement. The title is called Encouragement in a Messed Up World. And I'm not talking about our messed up world right now. This is just, I don't know, the world's always messed up, always has been. So when we go to Deuteronomy, we see a guy who is going to live in disappointment. However, he overcomes that disappointment. I'm talking about Moses, of course. So I want to read Deuteronomy 31, verses 1 through 13. The Bible says, so Moses went and spoke these words to all Israel. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, we're going to talk about Moses in a nutshell in just a minute, to bring you up to date on who Moses is. But this is toward the end of his life. And if you remember, he was able to look into the promised land, but he wasn't able to enter. Remember that? And there's some reasons for that. So, you know, for me, if I wandered around for 40 years, and I've been doing that pretty much over that, longer than that, and I was able to look into the land that God has promised, but I wasn't able to go in, I'd be a little disappointed. Wouldn't you? Because I would know that it was because of my past and the things choices, things I did that kept me from entering. Well, Moses obviously has disappointment, but he is dealing with that and does a very good job. Well, let's just read it and see what he did. Anyway, so Moses spoke these words to Israel. He said to them, I am 120 years old today. It was his birthday. Well, maybe not, but 120 years old. I seriously doubt any of us are going to make it that far. We might make 100. It's possible. We had a 102-year-old lady here before she passed away. I think she was 102. So we could make it. Anyway, he said, I'm 120 years old. I'm no longer able to come and go, but the Lord has said to me, you shall not cross this Jordan. It is the Lord your God who will cross ahead of you. He will destroy these nations before you, and you shall dispossess them. Joshua is the one who will cross ahead of you, just as the Lord has spoken. The Lord will do to them just as he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, and to their land when he destroyed them. The Lord will deliver them up before you, and you shall do to them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you. And this is the verse I want to look at today primarily. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. Then Moses called to Joshua and said to him in the sight of all of Israel, be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land which the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall give to them as an inheritance. The Lord is the one who goes ahead of you. He will be with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. In other words, Moses plagiarizes. God had just told him that. God had just told him that. He's repeating it, basically. Do not fear or be dismayed. So Moses wrote this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. Then Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the time of the year of remission of debts, at the feast of booths, when all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God, at the place which he will choose, you shall read this law in front of all Israel to their hearing. Assemble the people, the men and women and children, and the alien who is in your town, so that they may hear and learn and fear the Lord your God, and be careful to observe all the words of this law. Their children who have not known will hear and learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live on the land. You know, we live in a really messed up world today. Jim said that. I doubt that any of us would not agree that right now the world is different than it was a year ago. And there are many reasons, no matter who you talk to, somebody's got a different idea about why everything's happening. I've had people talk to me and tell me that it's all a conspiracy to get rid of President Trump. Other people tell me it's all a conspiracy to re-elect President Trump. I've heard that it's all a conspiracy to get rid of guns. I hear it's all a conspiracy. It's just crazy things people think. I'm not saying I think anything. I just know that it's a messed up world. But in this world, it's where we have to live. So what do? Well, when we look at the life of Moses, I want to give you just Moses in a nutshell. In case you don't remember anything about Moses, let me give you some facts about him. This is, you might call, a refresher course. First of all, Moses was a Hebrew. We remember that. He was born to Jochebed and Amram. They were the tribe of Levi. And he lived in Egypt, and they lived in Egypt as slaves. Remember that? He was the youngest of 3 children. He had a sister named Miriam, a brother named Aaron. Aaron kind of messed up a little bit later, didn't he? Remember what Aaron did? We'll get that in a minute. He married a woman named Zipporah, who was the daughter of Jethro. You know, if you name your children biblical names, please don't name them that. Or your grandchildren, I guess. Try to suggest something else. My son is named Matthew, one of my sons. The other one is named Jordan, so, we kind of like those names. I should have named him Jethro and nothing. I do have a friend whose son is named Moses, and I know some Noahs as well. But anyway, he had married them, had two children, Gershom and Eliezer. Now, so Moses was a Hebrew, born, raised in Egypt. Moses was a special baby, and something really happened, we would call divine intervention, in the life of Moses when he was a newborn. If you remember, Pharaoh was afraid of the Israelite slaves because there were so many. He ordered all the boy babies to be killed. So Moses' mother did what? Put him in a basket, put him among the reeds in the river where they knew the Egyptian people would come, the Glaze, Pharaoh's daughter, came, found the baby, and so what happened? Moses' sister, right, went and said, hey, why don't we go find a Hebrew woman to take care of this baby? So she did, and who did she get? Got her mother, Moses' mother. So anyway, and Moses, how many of you know what the name Moses means? It means to pull up out of the water. It's basically what it means, to pull out of, or draw out of, and specifically the water here. So they named him Moses. Well, Moses was raised as royalty in the Egyptian court. Pharaoh's daughter raised him, and then when he grew up, something happened. Moses was different than all the other Hebrew children. Obviously, when you're raised as royalty, you're going to be a little bit different. But he did know who he was. And then in Exodus chapter 2, verse 11 through 14, we find something really bad happening to Moses. Or not really bad happening, something he did that was really bad. And I will read it. It's Exodus 2, verse 11. Now it came about in those days when Moses had grown up, that he went out to his brethren and looked on their hard labors. And he saw an Egyptian, remember they were all slaves, an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that. And when he saw there was no one around, in other words, he planted. He looked, make sure nobody was watching. What did he do? He struck down the Egyptian and he killed him, and then he hid him in the sand. He went out the next day, and behold, 2 Hebrews were fighting with each other, and he said to the offender, why are you striking your companion? But he said, who made you a prince or judge over us? Are you intending to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? His secret was out. They knew it. So Moses was afraid and said, surely the matter has become known. So what did he do? He tried to cover up his murder, and said when he found out that they knew that he had killed this man, what did he do? He took off. He took off. We know that Moses was afraid. He lived in fear. If anybody committed a crime, a horrible crime, and you were found out, you would be afraid too of what they would do when they caught you. And he was. So he ran. Ran for his life. He hid in the desert of Midian for how many years? 40 years. He became a husband. He married. He had children. And then in Exodus 3:2, something else happened. God appeared to him. Remember that story, the burning bush? And God wanted Moses to go back to Egypt after 40 years and rescue his people. Moses said, yes, sir, I'm going right now. No, he didn't. He said, I'm not going to do it. Well, he was afraid. He was scared. So what did he do? He started making excuses. He said, I can't go. He stutters. I can't do it. Can't do it. So what happened? In Exodus 3:13, he asked God to send somebody else. So what happened? Exodus 4, again, this is all Moses in a nutshell. Exodus 4:10, then Moses said to the Lord, Lord, I've never been eloquent. Please, no, recently, nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. For I am slow of speech, slow of tongue. The Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth, or who makes him mute, or deaf, or seeing, or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now, then go, and I will be your mouth, and teach you what you are to say. But he said, please, Lord, now send the message by whomever you will. Then in verse 14. Then the anger of the Lord burned against Moses. Boy, I hate to put my name in there. The anger of the Lord burned against Moses. And he said, is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently. And moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You are to speak to him and put the words in his mouth. And I will be with your mouth and his mouth. And I will teach you what you are to do. So in other words, Moses made an excuse. And he said, you know what? That's not going to work. Because you have a brother who can speak. He's going to be the spokesman. You're going to tell him what to say. You're going to do that. And so Moses did. Well, what happened to him? He became a leader of the people of Israel. Moses showed courage. You know, later in life, as we read, he tells them to be of courage, be strong. And he speaks from experience. Now, it wasn't always that way with Moses. Moses struggled. But what happened? He said, Aaron is going to help you. Your brother's going to help you. And I'm going to be with you. Well, there's a long story. We're not going to list all of the plagues. How many of you can name all the plagues in order? Remember all the plagues and everything, and all the struggle of freeing the Israelites, and that finally happened. We'll just kind of skip over the plagues there. But that happened, and God spoke, and Moses led the people away. They went to the Red Sea. Something happened. Remember that? God performed a miracle. Then Exodus 4:13, but Moses said to the people, do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians who you have seen today, you will never see them again forever. God parts the sea, they walk through, the waters crush and kill the people. The Egyptians, that is. And he's right. No more Egyptians. Doesn't see him again. Well, God drew Moses close. And over all these years, and through all these experiences and walking with God, God drew Moses close to him. There were difficulties in his life. There were challenges in his life, just like we have. They spent 40 days together on Mount Sinai, and God gave Moses 2 tablets of the covenant law. You remember that story as well? We see that in Exodus 31, verse 18. Won't read that though. But while Moses was with God, something happened. The people got tired. What did they do? In Exodus 32, verse 1 says, when the people saw Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said, come, make us a God who will go before us. And as for this Moses, man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we don't know what's become of him. They said, hey, we don't know where he went. We need a God. Create, make us a God. So Aaron did. I'd hate to be in Aaron's shoes. So Aaron said, tear off the gold rings in your ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, bring them to me. Then all the people tore off the gold rings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took this from their hand and fashioned it into a graving tool and made it into a molten calf. And they said, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Now when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before them, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. So the next day they rose early and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, go down at once, for your people whom you brought up from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. The Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, they are an obstinate people. Now then, let me alone, that my anger may burn against them, that I may destroy them, and I will make you a great nation. So God told Moses, I'm going to destroy all these people and make a great nation of you. And Moses, what did he do? He pleaded with God not to do that. And God listened, and God forgave the people. And then one of my favorite stories in the Bible, and we have a song about this, is when Moses made a request to God. You know, people just didn't ask God for things back then. People just didn't say, God, I want to do this or that. In fact, they didn't have that understanding of who Yahweh is the way that we do. Then, today the difference is we, as believers, have the Spirit of God dwelling within us, the New Testament teaches. Is that right? The Spirit of God lives within His children. Back then it wasn't so. So you just didn't ask God, blah, 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 this, whatever. Well, Moses requested something from God, and he asked to see God's glory. And God responded in such a way that he was able to see not the full glory of God, because that would be impossible, I believe, but he was able to see God in a way that no one had seen God before. Exodus 34 said, the Lord passed by in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord God, compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in loving kindness and truth, who keeps loving kindness for thousands, who forgives iniquity, transgression, and sin, yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, visiting the iniquity of the fathers and children, grandchildren, third and fourth generations. And what happened? He saw the glory of God. And the song is called, I Don't Remember. No, I mean, it's not called I Don't Remember. I can't remember the Cleft of the Rock song. What is it?
Rock Name, Clever Name.
No, not that one. Is that it? What's that song? No. You know, I probably should have written the name of it down. Music lady, back in the back. Surely you know that. I hide my soul in the cleft of the rock. That's what you said, right? What's the name of that song?
Under my foot, my soul.
He hides my soul. Thank you. He hides my soul. Okay. Okay, I think that's it. I am not a music person. Let's clarify that. I don't sing. I don't dance. I don't do any of those things. I mean, I can. I just choose not to. Anyway, and the Bible refers to Moses in Deuteronomy 34 about whom the Lord, speaking about him, whom the Lord knew face to face. So Moses had a very special relationship with God. And we know that. We know that Moses, when we think about all those great men and women of the Bible, we think of Moses, we think of David, we think of Abraham, we think of Ruth, don't we? Those great, characters of Scripture, those great people. Well, Moses, something unique happened at the end of his life. Something that only Moses has experienced. We find this in Deuteronomy 34:7. It says that his eyes were not weak. He's 120 years old. Nor his strength was gone. But what happened? In verse 5 and 6 says, and Moses, the servant of the Lord. Now God let Moses go up and see the promised land. But then the servant of the Lord died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. And he buried him in Moab in the valley opposite Beth Peor. But to this day, no one knows where his grave is. God buried Moses, and no one knows where he is. Why? Many people think the Israelites probably tried to worship that or something. They worship the golden calf. They worship pretty much anything. Well, whatever it is, Moses had a very special relationship with God. And that's the point of that. First point, Moses knew Yahweh. Moses encouraged the people. You know, Paul did the same thing, didn't he? He encouraged the people just before his death. You remember that in the New Testament? Well, Moses gave them encouragement. Now, when you look at the life of Moses, in Exodus 7:7, Moses was 80 years old. Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh about letting the people go. You know, if you're 80 years old, and I'm not going to ask who's 80, but if you're 80 years old, God's not finished with you. Now, you may not have 40 years to roam around the desert of western Oklahoma, but whatever years left, God wants to use you, doesn't he? Deuteronomy 1:27, we see, the Lord was angry with me on your account. He said, not even you shall enter the land, speaking to Moses. So what did Moses do? When they got there, they were about to enter the promised land, God gave them encouragement. God promised them that all the nations, that he would destroy them, that he would lead them into the promised land. But it wouldn't be Moses who did it. It would be Joshua. It would be a new leader. But God's promises were true for his people. God was going to bless them. God was going to lead them into the land that he had promised to them. So what did he do? He told them, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will not fail you nor forsake you. Where is our church and where is our world going? How many of you know? None of us do. None of us know. When the Israelites were standing about to enter the promised land, do you think they knew everything God was going to do with them? No. You think they were probably afraid? They're probably tired of roaming around, first of all. But they were probably a little apprehensive about going and starting something new. They were used to living around and just roaming. They were used to that. Imagine being 30 years old, being born into that nomadic culture, and this is what you know. And now God is going to take you into this land, and you're going to see armies and face that and war. But God is going to promise you that he will go before you. And he says, don't be afraid. How many of you have ever experienced something new and you were afraid? You know, when I was a new father, I had a son. He was 3 months old. And my son was born with a birth defect. It was inside in his bladder, and they just found it by accident before he was born in an ultrasound. And we knew we were going to have surgery. So they let him get, when he was born, he was almost 13 pounds. He was 11 pounds and 12 ounces. No, he's almost 12 pounds. 11 pounds, no, yeah, 13, something like that. He's almost 12 pounds. He was big, let's put it that way. And we had to let him, he lost like 3 pounds after he was born. And normally a newborn losing 3 pounds is a very serious thing. But he had to. Now my late wife always used to tell me it's all those honey buns. Every morning she had to have a honey bun. Every morning I went to the store and bought her honey bun. Every single morning. And she blames it on those. And probably was. But this boy, he kind of got down to about 9 pounds, 3 months old, and we knew we were going to have surgery. So we finally got scheduled, got it all worked out. And on the bladder, there was a valve missing from his kidney bladder. They had to go in and fix it, create a valve. Well, as a new parent, it's a very difficult thing to take your 3-month-old and hand that baby over to a nurse and let them walk through those doors and back into surgery, knowing that they're going to cut him open and do all these things. That's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult thing. But you know, God blessed it. And God blessed him. Just the other day, 3 weeks ago Friday, I had to go to the hospital, and most of you probably know this, I had to have surgery, major surgery. First surgery I've ever had in my life. 3 months ago, March, first time I'd ever been in the hospital in my life. And so, you know, my first mistake was looking on the internet and looking at what they do for the surgery. That was the biggest problem. And they did it robotic, you know, laparoscopic surgery. And I saw all these things going in, and you know how anybody had that and blow you up and all of that. And you know, I think I got a big belly. It's just still that gas. I blame it on that. But that was my mistake. So, you know, when I get there and I know, okay, here's what they're going to do. I'll be in the hospital a week probably. Depends on how severe what they have to do. Long story short, they took 10 inches out of my colon. Not cancer, fortunately, it was something else, and diverticulitis. But they did that. And when I was going in, I knew they would knock me out, you know, before they start poking these things in me. And I knew I'd be asleep. I knew I'd just wake up and it'd all be over. And I thought, well, am I going to be afraid of this? I wasn't. I thought it was an adventure. I thought it was interesting. And because I knew that as soon as they said, put that thing on my face or whatever they do, that, you know, I'm out. Anybody had that experience? It's not pleasant, I mean, to think about it. The pleasant thing was thinking that afterward, I'm just going to wake up and it'll all be over. And that's a good thing. And I thought about, you know, some of this. You know, God says, you know, don't be afraid. And I knew at that moment that I was just like with my son. I was in God's hands. And I had to trust Him. It's very difficult to put yourself in the position of trusting somebody else. They knock you out, they cut you open, and they poke around your insides. That's the best way to explain it. That's a very difficult thing to do. If you've ever had, you know, surgery like that, you're putting yourself in somebody else's hands. And if they mess up, you're in trouble. I had sinus surgery a couple of years ago, and the doctor told me, he said, well, I've got to tell you this. There is a possibility that we go up deep in your sinuses, if you've ever had this happen, that there's a little bit between the upper and the sinuses, whatever, and your brain. If we accidentally hit that, it'll start leaking fluid from your brain. Anybody ever been told that?